Welcome in everybody to the Hawks Eye podcast, but really it's the Seahawks Syndicate. You've got myself, you've got Mookie Alexander, you got Brandon Kane, and we've got Dan Vian on remote tonight, checking in from being a grandfather tonight and giving us some of his time. So, gentlemen, we haven't been together for a while. How's everybody doing? Still celebrating the Super Bowl and everything? Brandon, I'll start with you. What have you been up to, man?
Just been enjoying the Super Bowl, man. Yep, just chilling back, relaxing, and it's been just reveling in that, kind of trying to stay away from a little bit of the Twitter on Seahawks fandom right now because everybody's a little bit uneasy, it seems. But other than that, feeling good.
Oh, Dan, I'll move to you next, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. All my Super Bowl merch has arrived. It all fits. It's all great. Really love that stuff. And I've done a pretty good job of not going deeper into it. Yeah, I am on remote reporting to you live tonight from the birthplace of Sean Kemp, the pride of Concord High School. I'm in Elkhart, Indiana tonight. And yeah, hanging out with the grandkids, baby.
Did we lose Dan already?
Darn it.
Oh, we got close. All right. Well, Mookie, I'll move to you here, friend. How are you doing? How's everything over at Field Goals, and how crazy has it been so far?
Oh, things have been going great over at Field Goals. Sorry, I'm just seeing somebody in the comments saying Dan looking like Pete Carroll. Maybe more like Dan Quinn because of the backwards hat. I mean, the backwards hat is textbook Dan Quinn. Anyway, Dan will come back in due time, I'm pretty sure. But how can I celebrate a Super Bowl win when I could spend more valuable time worrying about 2027 comp picks and long-term contracts in 2028 and 2029, and worrying again that free agency hasn't started yet and John Schneider has barely done anything. But, oh, wait, he has done something. He has re-signed or extended one of the impending free agents. But you would think after a Super Bowl win, you'd be kind of simmering down, like just wait it out. And I guess for a lot of fans, it's their first offseason with John Schneider somehow.
Yeah, that's kind of been the ongoing concern I've had a little bit here, guys, is the fact that it seems like everyone forgot either A, that we won a Super Bowl, either B, that John Schneider does have an idea of what he's doing and just won Executive of the Year. I don't know. It's like we've got goldfish memories on what Seattle just accomplished because everybody's freaking out like we haven't won the Super Bowl. Why are we not spending the money that is afforded to us and not looking at like all the other pieces that are involved outside of, hey, you're never going to be able to run it back with the same roster. Like it just doesn't happen. Look at 2013 to 2014. There was significant departures off that team. I just don't get the panic right now. Like I'm super relaxed about this and the fact that, hey, if we get Crosby, great. If we don't, we don't. Like for me, my back hairs will stand up a little bit if DeMarcus Lawrence retires. Then there's a little bit of a, okay, we need to address this in a way because that edge group got really thin really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I find myself right where you guys are at with this, maybe even more so in the patient side of this. The reason being is not because I don't want to press for another Super Bowl. I do. I don't want to just throw money around for the sake of aggression or the sake of trying to keep up with the Joneses or whatever reason people are putting out there other than you're actually getting good value, good bang for your buck. And so I come back around to saying, look, I don't mind being patient on this. This is the way John tends to operate anyway. He's not a wave one free agent guy. And your guys right now are getting lined up to be a lot of wave one guys. Certainly Walker, certainly with Shaheed, potentially Mafe, potentially Woolen. And that means like it makes sense why he's kind of out on that. I think that there's a smart approach to this where we don't have to feel impelled that we have to like, damn the torpedoes, go for broke. I don't understand that sentiment. And I think it's more John smarter to be smart about this and let's let the Super Bowl window last.
Exactly. And that's kind of how I view it. Like, enjoy this. Like, we're in the window, we're through. Now we're in the car and driving along the highway here and figuring out where this path's going to go. I just think this whole kind of, hey, we're going to freak out and go nuts because we haven't spent money or don't have a plan or there's not breaking news that we've done anything. It just seems kind of odd. Mookie, what about you?
Yeah, I feel like what fans are really fixated on is wanting a dynasty. And of course, sure, I would love a dynasty. I'd love to be the Chiefs or the Patriots or the 70s Steelers or the 80s 49ers where you win 3 or 4 Super Bowls in next to no time. But let's be realistic. Regardless of what Seattle does in this offseason, even if they re-sign everybody that we want to see re-signed, winning 2 Super Bowls in a row is exceptionally rare and really freaking difficult for a reason, especially in the salary cap era. So I think that you just got to give it time. Maybe it's more disappointment in terms of like the context of the people who might be leaving, like Rashid Shaheed, and the fact that they gave up 2 draft picks and he might be gone, or Kenneth Walker ending on a high as Super Bowl MVP and he might be going. So I think that's kind of the difference. It depends on the free agent. I think that for a lot of fans are not bothered either way if Riq leaves, whereas I would kind of be. But yeah, I think that we got to chill out. I say we, the 4 of us are not freaking out right now. But for the fan base as a collective, just give it some time. It's March 5th. Like the league, the tampering starts March 9th. And then the actual league year starts March 11th. So you just got to give it some time and then figure out what the Seahawks plan actually is. I think we all have a generally good idea of what they intend to do. But my read on this is some of it is John Schneider's historically not a guy who's just going to extend his free agents way before the league year opens. And the other bit is not being reckless with the ample cap space that you have, knowing you got a whole bunch of other decisions to make in the months to come with extensions, draft pick signings, other free agent signings, and all that. You don't want to close your own window so fast.
Yeah, exactly. Dan, what about you? How are you feeling with, everything that's going on right now, or the lack thereof of post breaking news and whatnot?
Well, I wish I was as disciplined as Mr. Kane and I could just stay off Twitter and stay away from all this bullshit, because it's just ridiculous. But I can't bring myself to, and then it gets to me. Like these people that are complaining that we haven't done anything, right? That John Schneider's somehow sitting on his hands, that it's already a bad offseason. What were we supposed to have done? What are they reacting to? We can't sign anybody that's a free agent. We can only sign cap casualties. You're not going to do that now and use up your cap space before free agency even starts. That's irresponsible. Look, there's only 2 instances I think that it's okay for a GM to overpay. And that's what we're talking about here, right? We all know what we would like Ken Walker to cost. We all know what we would like Rashid Shaheed to cost. And I think there's a number that the Seahawks probably thought they would cost, or maybe it was wishful thinking. Based on all the reports now, and this intel that we get nowadays is a lot more accurate. It's leaked for a reason. It's very intentional. It's very purposeful. If those numbers are accurate, then they shouldn't re-sign Rashid Shaheed or Ken Walker. And there's 2 exceptions to that. One, in my opinion, if you're an elite player away from putting your team over the top, then I think you're justified in maybe overpaying to get a guy. The other reason that you would overpay is if you're a shitty organization, if you're a bad team that goes about building their roster in the wrong way. And what blows me away is this. 4 or 5 years ago, what was the overwhelming narrative among the fan base? John Schneider's washed. He can't draft anymore, right? 6, 7, 8 years in a row of bad drafting. Mina Kimes went on ESPN and talked about it a couple of years ago, made a big deal out of it. Well, now we're getting penalized. Now he drafts too good. He's too good at drafting. So now we have too many young players and everybody else wants them, which drives the price up and we can't keep them all. Like you got to pick a lane, right? I just don't get it. They're not done yet. And then if you need to look any further than a year ago at this time to appease yourself and make yourself feel better, they lost their starting quarterback and they weren't expecting to. Lost their number 1 wide receiver, weren't expecting to. How did they react to that? I don't think there's anybody better in the league at having their finger on the pulse of what the market is and having a plan A, B, C, D, E, F, G and pivoting when things don't go your way than John Schneider. People are panicking and they shouldn't. Everything's going to be fine. I'm a sicko. I'm excited to see what happens next. I kind of get off on this stuff because for every guy that walks out the door now, there's an opportunity to acquire another player. It frees up money. And sometimes, you know what? Maybe that player turns out to be better.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I look at it overall, guys, and I go, like, this is something that good team. It's a first world problem, right? Like, this is what we wanted to have happen. We wanted to win a Super Bowl, and good players on your team eventually get replaced. But if you want to keep the JSNs and the Witherspoons and these type of guys that are true game-changing players, sometimes you have to let guys go that are good level starting players, like a Rashid Shaheed or a Ken Walker. Like, I get the last month of Ken Walker's potentially Seahawks career was fantastic, but it's like everyone's forgotten what the first 3 years were like to a point with the injuries and all the other things. And yes, if we lose Ken Walker, it is going to sting. He's a very good running back, but it doesn't mean that our whole offense is going to fall apart because Ken Walker and Rashid Shaheed walk out the door. Am I the only one that feels that way?
Can I say one more thing about the running back situation too? Remember the uproar 3 and 4 years ago that we took running backs in the second round in back-to-back years, right? In the second round, we took running backs and everyone was up in arms and livid, positional value. Well, now one of those running backs turned out to be good enough that a bunch of teams want to pay him more than the market should bear. And that's somehow a mistake. I don't get it, man.
Also easy to forget Rashid Shaheed wasn't on the team the first 2 months of the year when Sam Darnold was having some of his best football of his career. On field goals, there was actually, I don't want to single commenters out or anything, but there's some people even on social media panicking over the thought of even paying JSN and whether they should trade JSN like next year or whatever, just because teams with expensive wide receivers tend not to do very well. I feel like we're in way too small of a sample size for that. Like the Cincinnati Bengals, for example, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins are getting paid a lot. Personally, I would have only paid Chase. I think there's a big difference between paying a lot of money for 2 receivers versus just 1. The reason the Bengals are not Super Bowl contenders isn't because Jamar Chase is making $40 million a year. The reason they're not contenders is Joe Burrow gets hurt a lot. And they've had many opportunities to have good defensive draft picks and have whiffed on almost every single one of them. You can pay JSN this offseason, give him his money because he means so much to your offense. It doesn't close okay, fine. Have it your way, move on from JSN for whatever silly reason. Is your replacement going to be any better? It ain't that easy. If drafting was that easy, then everybody would just be willing to keep their draft picks for all time. But Schneider's been on a hell of a run with his drafts these last few years. Even the best GMs, whether it's him or Howie Roseman or anyone you can name, they're going to have a clunker. So trying to bank on constantly replacing guys successfully through the draft is fool's gold, unrealistic. And my recommendation is for everybody, get off Madden. Like, great video game series, but it's not reality. It's rooted in reality, but how things actually play out, way more variables than what you see in a video game.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. And so let's kind of talk about some of the Seahawks news, obviously, that happened. Drake Thomas got signed. He got, taken I believe he got tendered, and then they decided, or no, they didn't tender him because it would have been $3.5 million for his tender. Instead, they signed him to a 2-year, $8 million deal with incentives that go up to $9 million. Brandon, I'll start with you. What were your thoughts of that? Like, we saw linebackers in Mobile that we kind of liked and thought, hey, depending on what happens with Drake Thomas, maybe there's someone in this draft they might be able to get. We now know Drake Thomas is coming back. Do you think that's an area they still need to address in the draft? And how do you feel about the contract?
No, from back to front on this, I think that this does secure you at the linebacker position. And when you are down a 4th and 5th round pick, absent John Schneider being able to trade back in this draft and collect more selections, you needed to get some of this stuff dealt with up ahead of time so that you're not driven into the worst place to get into when you're into a draft, which is now picking for need. And while there are some interesting linebackers, like you said, that we got to see at the Senior Bowl, I don't think it's a necessarily super deep class with guys, especially when you're not really having a need for the Mike linebacker position as much as anything else. So this is one where I think on that front, it makes a lot of sense. The secondary front of Drake Thomas, he got better as the year went along, the more he got to play. And he was a great all-around player. We knew he would be fast in coverage, but he also showed he was a grade A blitzer last year when you needed to send him. By the end of the year, he was shooting gaps in the run game where I don't know if it was always called or he just had indicators off his tape study that he'd see it and he'd pull the trigger. But the guy was just getting better and better and better as the year went along. The size issues don't seem to be a problem at all in this particular defense. I love what he brought to play. He gives you depth at the position now, starts to reinforce some of that, and the cost is not significant at all. Now you got it for 2 years as well, so if the team comes calling for Tyree Snight, if that is a piece that somebody says, hey, there might be some value here. Hey, this is a guy that could maybe be a starting Mike linebacker for us based on how he's played so far in his career. Now you feel okay at possibly doing that too as well. So I love the deal every which way.
Mookie, how about you? How do you feel about the deal?
I am thrilled that they were able to extend Drake Thomas at a cheap cost. Yeah, I mean, you think about Seattle's linebacker group, just the two starters, so Drake and Ernest Jones. One of the great moves of Schneider the previous offseason was not, of course, signing Sam Darnold and bringing in Tank Lawrence. It was re-signing Ernest Jones to what I feel was a below-market rate contract. So now you have an all-pro linebacker in Ernest he's on a very affordable deal. And then you've got a very good sidekick in Drake Thomas. And to me, like an emerging standout player on this defense on a 2-year deal. 2-year deals, $8 million could be worth up to $9 million. So you're essentially like $13 million a year combined for your 2 starting linebackers. That's excellent. And this was a position we were worried about last year. And I think it wasn't unjustifiable because we didn't know Thomas would be like this. And you had Patrick O'Connell and Tyrese Knight was just coming back from injury. And if anything, Tyrese Knight clearly not being 100% to start the year was one of the best things that happened to the Seahawks defense because it meant that Drake Thomas had more opportunities to shine. So linebacker depth, you could always use it in a pinch, but it's not an urgent need. So essentially, they're fine at the inside linebacker position. And of course, we already know Eamon Boye is kind of like a pseudo backer at that time. So they are well set there. The thing with Schneider is you look at exploiting market inefficiencies or looking at areas where the market is more favorable. Linebacker and safety are probably the 2 positions right now on defense where there is not high demand for ridiculous money. And that to me is where Schneider sees that and goes, I can have Drake for a song, having just come off an undrafted rookie contract, and have Ernest with some question marks about his knee available at what, $9 or $10 million a year. All set. Don't have to worry about linebacker this year at all.
Yeah, and so Dan, I'll go to you. You're the biggest Drake Thomas fan I know. You have one of your biggest videos on your channel is the Drake Thomas being acquired by the Seattle Seahawks. So obviously for you, this was like Christmas, but for you, how do you look at this situation now?
The biggest video that I've ever had in the history of my channel. Yeah, he was a guy that was a real late round draft crush of his class. Obviously, then he went undrafted. And so when we sniped him, at the cut down to 53 from the Raiders, I was ecstatic and immediately reacted to it and framed it as I thought he had future starting linebacker upside. And so, it's satisfying to be right about that. But it also, when people get really bent out of shape or just concerned about any one player's salary being more than they think we should be paying. And you guys have probably heard this too. I've heard that about Cooper Kupp this week, right? I've gotten a lot of fans that have reached out to me and said, hey, why are we afraid to pay Shaheed his market value when we're paying $15 million to a guy that's past his prime? For every player like that you think might be taking up too much cap space, you find a bargain like Drake Thomas and it all kind of equals itself out, right? And that's just where John Schneider has really been cooking the last 4 or 5 years. And that's another thing that I would say to any fan that's concerned about how this thing looks long term is look at this front office, this personnel staff, their evaluation process. They're going to keep finding young players like this, which means, A, this is going to be a problem in most years. We're going to see guys leave that we don't necessarily want to leave, but we're also going to keep restocking the shelves with young players, young depth, and developing those players. So guys like Drake Thomas and Ty Okada become relevant players, if not really good starters, to replace some of those guys that walk away.
Yeah, and you talk about Ty Okada got his tender, so he's not going anywhere. And there's a starting caliber safety that you're going to have on a very cheap deal if Coby Bryant doesn't end up coming back. So let's kind of pivot here, gentlemen, and kind of look at what are Seattle's biggest roster needs. And we'll break this down in 2 other segments where we get into free agency in particular in the draft. But Mookie, I'll start with you. For you, what are your 3 biggest needs for the Seattle Seahawks roster currently going into this offseason?
Under the assumption that Walker walks, and of course, this is all on the free agency as it starts, so some of these needs might get filled like pretty quickly. But running back is going to be, to me, their biggest need on offense because you've got Charbonnet out for a while. You don't know if he's going to start the year on the PUP list. And don't forget, as much as I like Kenny McIntosh, he's been here 3 years. He's had 2 significant knee injuries in 3 seasons. So, relying on him to be back at his best suddenly when he's hardly ever been on the field is asking a lot. And then George Holani, he's a nice, downhill runner type of back, but also he's had a history of injuries too. So you've got major injury question marks with your backup running backs. Never mind Kenneth Walker and whether or not he stays. But I think that there's a reasonably robust free agent market for like second level running backs. So that would be your Rico Dowdles, although I wouldn't sign Dowdle. Tyler Algier is somebody I would be interested in for sure. So there are options in free agency. There are plenty of options in the draft. So running back, I think, is going to be a need for the Seahawks. I wouldn't be surprised if they end up signing a direct replacement for Walker and then drafting somebody in April. On the defensive side of the ball, I think, and a lot of this is dependent on whether or not Tank retires, edge rusher is going to be a need because, and also, I don't know what they're going to do with Chenna Nwosu's contract, whether they'll restructure it or if it'll be a cap casualty or a trade possibility, but Mafe's probably gone. And I can't really support bringing him back based on just the lack of consistent productivity here. But leaves you with pretty much Derek Hall as your only sure thing heading into next season. So edge rusher class, again, I think that this is, Daniel Jeremiah brought it up, edge rusher even on day 2 looks like an area that could be a sweet spot for a lot of teams. And then in the immediacy of free agency, a veteran like Khalil Mack's available. You've got Odafe Owe, another Los Angeles Charger and a former Baltimore Raven. Jalen Phillips, perhaps. Some of these guys will get re-signed. Others are going to hit the market. But I think edge rusher is definitely a point of emphasis for sure for this defense. And then cornerback, I think, is still going to be a need for Seattle, even if it's just Riq leaving and they keep Jobe, just for kind of like finding a specific cornerback. And what I mean by that is I'm fine with Jobe and Spoon, of course, but you still have kind of an undersized cornerback room. And even if they draft a smaller cornerback, say 5'10", 5'11" guy, or D'Angelo Pons is 5'9" but can jump out of the gym, they still need to sign a cornerback who's got some height on him. So like 6 foot and up or 6'1" and up, I will take that. So cornerback room gets a little bit shakier by losing Riq because he does mean quite a bit to this defense. But the fact that those are pretty much the only 3 needs I could think of tells you a lot about the state of the Seahawks. And maybe the most important thing, I did not say offensive line. You want to replace Bradford, fine, but that is not priority number 1. It's like, for once, we're not here talking about, man, they need this offensive lineman, they need this guard, they need this center, they need this tackle. It's a damn good thing that they didn't listen to us last year as far as signing Will Fries, Mekhi Becton, or who's the other guy, Dahlman. So, like, hey,
don't forget about Tevin Jenkins. Okay, we were all scrambling for the Tevin Jenkins sweepstakes. That was the next big thing. But Dan, I'll go to you next. What's your 3 biggest needs on the Seattle roster?
Well, I mean, what Mookie said. It really is. But I'll do this. I'll answer it this way. I'll just focus on one, because the way I look at it is, as much as, and we've already said it here in the show, but as much as I try to remind people every day, it's March 5th. We don't play a game this Sunday. The roster's not going to be set for a couple more months. If we had to play a game tomorrow, to me, it's hands down. There's no question. Running back is the biggest need on this roster, because you could run out a starting lineup tomorrow with Derek Hall and Uchenna Nwosu at edge. You could, and DeMarcus Lawrence, I don't think he's going to retire. At cornerback, you can play Devin Witherspoon on the outside and Nehemiah Pritchett on the other side. I think Nehemiah Pritchett has a chance to be an adequate, competent starter in this league. But at running back, literally the only healthy running back you have on your 53-man roster is George Holani. And we only got him in undrafted free agency because, as Mookie mentioned, of his extensive injury history, even dating back to his days in college. And so, to me, right now, that's the biggest need. And that's the first one that I think is going to be addressed. I think when Monday rolls around, it sounds like we're starting to hear some names now. I talked to Corbin Smith yesterday. He's got some intel on guys we're kicking the tires on. I think they're going to move quickly to get a running back. I haven't given up on Ken Walker yet. It's a non-zero chance, I think, that he goes and tests the market, and some of these reports aren't accurate, and maybe the Seahawks step up and he comes back. I'll believe it when I see it. But I think that's the first move they make. I think it's a 1-year deal for a veteran, and I think that's reflective of them also seeing that, and that's their biggest need right now. They need to get that one taken care of.
All right, Brandon. Well, I put you in a tough spot. I'm coming to you last year because I expect you to give me something creative and off key. But what for you are the biggest needs of the Seattle Seahawks?
Well, I think I probably am in a little bit of disagreement on the fact of running back being a need. It's something you're going to need to fill as a whole, but is it a need that I need to go find a replacement as far as a difference maker, or I need to put significant assets into it? No, I would say that I need 2 edges. I need 2 outside corners. I need safety reinforcement. Those are bigger priorities to me. The whole thing with this running back thing is that we've seen this played out as far as the understanding that the analytic folks were correct. Being that if you take care of your offensive line, you have a great scheme in there, you have a competent quarterback, and you have a competent defense, that's going to be the driving force for a good running game. Not a sensational, talented running back. This has just been played out in front of our eyes with back-to-back second-round picks in Zach Charbonnet and Walker. You didn't really start to be able to fully utilize them until those parameters had been set up ahead of the stack. So if that was proven to be true, why wouldn't it be proven to be true in the future? Yes, it's great to have a star back if you can find it. But guess what? There's not one available. There's not a guy that's going to move that needle in the way, not out there in free agency and not in the draft, in my opinion, once you get past Love. So you got to kind of make do with what you got. But the good news being that you can still put more than a functional running game together with what you got because you finally have taken care of those items up ahead of the stack. Edge rush, though, we got a lot of pressure last year. It was very slow pressure. It took a long period of time to get there. You need to get there faster. You need to get there more consistently off the edge. And we need to double down. Uchenna is going to have to be released. $11 million is too much to be saved. Can't sit on the roster. Just can't happen. I don't really understand the necessity behind even thinking of reworking his deal. What did he do last year to make you think over the last couple of years that suddenly now he's going to reinvent himself back to the player he was a couple of years ago? It's not likely to happen, and he costs a bunch to do so. 2 corners, Jobe and Woolen are both walking. You need to fill that in. And while Okada's nice to have back there, I think Okada's more of a free safety than he's a strong safety. And while this defense has you doing a lot of similar things between your safeties and the responsibility, it's not fully that way. There are still more times where your strong safety is going to be asked to do strong safety stuff and your free safety is going to be asked to do free safety stuff. So I would probably go a little bit more in a different direction there to a degree.
Yeah, I tend to lean with you on the running back thing. I think you can find a stopgap at some point in this free agency that can come in, that can be an upgrade over what you currently have on the roster until Charbonnet's back, and then go in the draft and potentially get somebody. We've seen there's quite a few running backs you'll be able to get day 2, day 3 that could probably come in and be a difference maker. And this system doesn't require a difference maker even for that. It just needs someone that can churn out 3 to 4 yards a carry and keep the offense kind of rolling. I do agree with you, though, Brandon, on the edge situation. Like, again, Chenna's way too expensive. The restructure, even whatever that number comes in at, again, that may still be too high. Mafe is going to be gone. You're not getting Mafe back. And we don't know what Tank's going to do. And that's the kind of the wild card right now. If Tank comes back, okay, you have another year to kind of address this issue, but you need to start doing some of that now because Derek Hall is going to be due up for a potential extension if that's a way they want to go. And he has to, in my opinion, do even more than what he did last year to really garner that true extension. Because I still am sitting in the camp, he's a B-level edge rusher. And that's not saying I don't love Derek Hall, but to your point, Brandon, that pass rush was slow in creating the effect last year. It got there, but teams are going to be better prepared to handle it this year. So I tend to lean with you there as well. The other thing for me, and this is something I think, they're going to have to figure out is what is the health and the longevity health of Torrey Horton, because your receiving core outside of JSN, and if Shaheed leaves, it gets really thin as well, because we don't know how long Cooper Kupp's got at the $15 million cap hit. We don't know how healthy Torrey Horton can be. And then after that, it's Jake Bobo's now potentially walking. Maybe they bring him back. Tariq Young, Ricky White, Cody White, like these aren't guys. So that's another area I would put even potentially above running back is, okay, what are we doing to address our receiver position down the line as well? But let's kind of take a look here, guys, at free agency and some of the targets. Brandon, I'll start with you this time. Who are some targets that stand out in your mind that you'd like Seattle to kind of go in and see if they can pull out of this class?
I want ring chaser guys. So the edge is the priority to me because I don't think that you're going to have a lot of luck by targeting an edge 32 and onwards in the draft. When you look from the productivity of edges, when you're trying to target them in the second or third round, they tend to do almost nothing in their first year. And sometimes it almost takes to year 3 or 4 before you get anything kind of really from them. Look at Boye Mafe and Derek Hall as recent examples of this. So I'd like to go get some more, actually, the double dip in free agency, go get some ring chasers. We've got a whole freaking basket full of guys that are plus 30 years old, will come in probably on a 1-year deal, will probably not cost a lot of money, and you could double dip on that. You could go a Von Miller and a Cam Jordan, a Jadeveon Clowney and a Khalil Mack, and now put those together with the DeMarcus Lawrence and a Derek Hall, and it starts to look way better than it even looked last year.
Yeah, and the other one that I think would be interesting in that, potentially to your point on the ring chasers is that Cameron Jordan, him being out there and being available. Like, you need guys that maybe they're not going to put up those huge numbers, but they're going to have enough of an impact to change it when you get enough of them together. So, no, I like that theory in a lot of ways. Dan, what about you?
I've been a fan of Arnold Ebiketie and that idea for a while, and there's a lot that goes into that. I think his profile is very, very similar to Boye Mafe, right? Really good athletic profile. Loved him coming out of Penn State. Really long arms. Had one of the best skill sets as far as bend off the edge in that draft class, and then never really lived up to his draft status in a similar way to Boye Mafe. Never really satisfied the fan base or the team. Obviously, they went out last year and drafted a bunch of young edge rushers, and he became more of a rotational guy. But I thought he got better every year. I think his cost is gonna be controlled because he wasn't highly productive. But also remember that John Boyle wrote about this right after that draft class was finished, or after that second day. The Seahawks had Ebiketie higher on their draft board than Boye Mafe. The Falcons moved up ahead of him, sniped him 2 picks earlier. They settled for Boye Mafe, but they liked Ebiketie better. He's an A+, person, character, all that stuff that the Seahawks value. It kind of reminds me of when they got Uchenna Nwosu a few years ago from the Chargers. He was a rotational guy. The production wasn't there to warrant a big contract. They gave him a 2-year deal. It obviously paid off, and they got another contract out of it. Maybe it's a 1-year deal. Maybe it's 2 or 3. There's some indications he might get paid a little bit more than maybe I thought, in which case I might rethink this. But I like, I love the idea of the older guys, right? Khalil Mack, Von Miller. We know that he was almost a Seahawk last year. My only concern with that is certainty, reliability, right? Those guys have a lot of wear on the tires, and maybe they break down sometimes. We got a little fortunate, I think, with DeMarcus Lawrence last year. So if we're going to double dip, maybe we do one of those older guys and then maybe combo that with a younger guy that we think is still ascending and has some ceiling left to reach.
No, and I think that's a fair, opportunity to go that way. Mookie, what about you? Where does it land for you on some of these targets?
I'm really only looking at a few positions. So I mentioned Tyler Algier already, and I think it might have been Corbin Smith, who had mentioned Seattle having interest in Algier, mostly because I think he would be that kind of cheaper deal. Travis Etienne would probably be the next most prominent free agent running back outside of Kenneth Walker. And I sense that Etienne would cost a decent amount of money, and maybe even more than what Seattle's willing to pay. Etienne certainly provides more quickness and more lateral ability, I think, than Algier. Algier is a powerful runner. What gravitates me toward Algier and kind of has me gravitating away from a certain running back who started the combine, dude's never fumbled, or he's never lost a fumble in his career. And I mentioned this before. Ken Walker and Charbonnet combined have never lost a fumble through their 3 seasons together in Seattle, and then you add Walker's 4th year. So I think that Algier would at least be a nice stopgap option, maybe not necessarily a guy you think of long term. At wide receiver, because I think receiver could be obviously one of those needs for Seattle pending Horton's health. I think that Romeo Doubs would be a nice fit for the Seahawks offense, except one thing, I'm genuinely worried about the frequency at which he gets concussions. Or at least because he is one of those guys who wears that guardian cap, and he's had some injury problems, but he can be that above the rim winner with strong hands that Seattle doesn't totally have right now. Like, JSN is excellent, but he's not a guy you're just going to do a one-on-one jump ball with. So I think that Doubs could be one of a splash option for them. Edge rusher. I'm like Chason from New England has really resurrected his career. It's just that he's kind of one-dimensional. He's not much of a run defender at all. Otherwise, I would have gone like Owe would be another splash signing potential. I think he really broke out with the Chargers. But as I think it was Brandon who said, Khalil Mack, I think, would be a nice fit for Seattle's defense. I think he has a little more in the tank. I'm blown away that Von Miller had 9 sacks last year. Like, I genuinely, where did that come from? I thought that was a fake stat. But are you going to bank on him at age 37 or 38 having another year like that? I'm not sure. I think Mac has got a little less tread on those tires, and I think that he could be this year's Tank Lawrence in a way, but a little bit cheaper. So if they make any moves at cornerback, one name that I would be keen on is Monteric Brown for the Jaguars. Jacksonville's defense was quite impressive throughout the year, and I thought Brown was an underrated part of their defense. I certainly like him a lot more than Greg Newsome, who's another free agent also from Jacksonville.
Yeah, this class is kind of, again, it's, I think Brandon's got a really good beat on this, is go find your ring chasers. This roster's still built to win, but you need to bring a little bit more power and that to repeat. So it could be interesting. For me, I like Khalil Mack, the Cam Jordan. I like the double dip idea. Another running back that I think I could see Seattle, and what I've been told Seattle is quite interested in, is Brian Robinson Jr. from the 49ers, because of the connection to Fleury there and his, connection with him from being the tight ends coach and running his scheme here. That's another guy that's a possibility. But again, a guy I don't think you're going to have to break the bank to go get. And this draft class, again, has where Seattle's probably going to be picking in a lot of areas. I think there's going to be opportunities for him. Now, I'll throw this name out. Are you guys interested in Jonathan Grenard out of the Minnesota there, Brandon? Or is that someone you'd be interested if he got cut? I'll put it this way. If he gets cut, not at the price tag Minnesota's currently asking for, but if he got cut, would he be a guy that would be on your list of someone to go get?
Yeah, and quite frankly, I'd be maybe even willing to throw the second rounder at him because of the fact that I don't trust, as I said, on young pass rushers being brought in here and being productive, and we are trying to go see if we can go back to back. I don't want to have a bunch of guys that are just kind of learning their way through for a couple of years as the rest of the defense is good to go. Watching a lot of his tape, I'll tell you guys, he reminds me a lot of Chris Clemens. Going back and looking at him as far as how he goes about his business, just a professional pass rusher that can win in a variety of different ways and throws in a pretty killer spin move on top of it. A complete defender at that. I think it makes a lot of sense. And I think in trading for him, the nice part is that you have him on the 2-year deal. You don't have to give him a contract right now. So it gives you a little bit of buying yourself some time to make a decision on him too, as far as long-term, but he's a dog.
Mookie, what about for you?
Well, it would be fulfilling and full circle for me, because back when we regularly did mock drafts across all the SB Nation sites, Jonathan Grenard was my mock draft pick for, I believe, the first round. And I said it would be a reach, and he ended up going like early third, I believe, that they would look at Grenard. And they did meet with him. Like they absolutely met with him the year that they ended up drafting Darrell Taylor. And he has a lot of those Seahawky traits that Pete loved. And I'm sure that Schneider would have otherwise been a fan of. So Grenard has had some ups and downs like early on in his career, but once he got into a groove with productivity at the end of his time in Houston, I thought, okay, they've got something here. And he continued to be successful in Minnesota. I think that he has the ability to transform the Seahawks pass rush. If there's a trade, I absolutely wouldn't mind if Seattle traded for Grenard and even gave up a player in the process. Like that's how high on I am on him possibly helping the Seahawks, because the one thing with guys like Mafe and Hall, as already been alluded to, they might be able to win with some raw power from time to time, but they don't get there fast enough. And what we saw against the Rams is offensive linemen who can shut them down. They don't really have another move to go to. And Grenard, I think, has got that sort of versatile way of pass rushing that can make life harder for Matthew Stafford or any other team with either a quarterback who gets the ball out quickly or an offensive line that does an excellent job of protecting the quarterback. So I would be, of all the people who could be available for trade, I think Grenard fits. So like all the thought about like Khalil Mack is cool, these 1-year deals for veterans who are chasing rings. I also would like guys who could be a long-term part of this team. Kind of like when they signed Julian Love or signed Uchenna Nwosu originally, like that could fit. And shout out to Brandon again for the Chris Clemens comparison, because field goals lost its freaking mind when we traded Darryl Tapp for Chris Clemens. Like Chris Clemens was an underrated part of that defense. Maybe this is Chris Clemens 2.0.
Dan, I'll ask you this. I'll kind of phrase it this way. I'll go around the table. But Dan, for you, how active do you expect Seattle to be in the first 72 hours of free agency this year?
Probably more active than we've seen in recent years, just because they are going to have to add some certainty. And I think you get more certainty early in free agency. I will just make it, I just want to chime in on the Grenard thing. I'll make it 3 for 3 across the board, 1,000%. I was ecstatic when I saw the news that he was available. He was a massive draft crush of mine that year. In fact, and maybe you guys can help me out with this, if I recall, there was another pass rusher on that same Florida team that was a higher ranked prospect. I can't even remember who it is now. I think that speaks to how that player ended up doing. I liked Grenard a lot better. Mookie mentioned it, a lot of Seahawk characteristics, leader, really unselfish. Read a profile about him yesterday, and there was a quote in there about how unselfish he is in understanding how to work his pass rush plan so that, everybody works together. And I was like, well, that's straight out of the Mike Macdonald playbook. So, and I'm with those guys too. I would trade the second round pick for him. You're not getting a guy at 64 in this class that's going to give you that kind of contribution. A healthy Jonathan Grenard would have been the best pass rusher on our defense this year. I mean, back-to-back 12-sack seasons before he got hurt last year, and he's supposed to be good to go by camp. So I think that's kind of a no-brainer. And I would do it all day long over Maxx Crosby. Same age, $10 million less on the cap hit. And I think he's a guy that you don't have to worry about fitting into that locker room in any way whatsoever.
Would it be Ja'Kai Polite from Florida?
Was that it?
There was a dude from that Florida team who was so bad that the Jets cut him as a rookie in the third round.
Didn't the Seahawks give Polite a sniff?
Yeah, like 10 seconds on the practice.
Yeah, on the practice. Yeah, that's right. Good pull, Mookie.
All right, guys. So, we're talking about free agency, and obviously that's kind of the forefront of everybody's mind, but there was something that did happen, the scouting combine. And so I'll ask you this, Mookie. I'll start with you. What are some prospects that stood out to you from what you saw in the Senior Bowl game to maybe even Shrine Bowl, and guys you've been following? Who has maybe risen up your board for targets for Seattle?
I think, and this is a shout out to Corbin Smith on this, Chris Johnson from San Diego State could definitely be somebody on Seattle's board. I believe that he has a chance to get into the first round. He looked pretty impressive in the drills. You know what disappoints about the combine is how few players at specific positions did every drill. And you had some guys doing just the 40, other guys doing 40 and like a broad jump or a vertical jump. And it's kind of a bummer when that happens. And it makes you wonder what the future of the combine looks like. How much are we going to be emphasizing pro days moving forward, or some other retooling of the combine so that more guys participate? But yeah, Chris Johnson is somebody I think is going to rise on Seattle's board. Zion Young, I think, kind of reaffirms his status as somebody who could be on the Seahawks radar, just between his Senior Bowl performance and how he's done at the combine. I'm trying to remember, who's the other dude from Michigan not named Derek Moore? Is it Barham?
I think you're right.
Yeah,
right.
I think that he's also kind of in the running as like a day two-ish option for Seattle. Certainly not anybody who's going to be like a first round prospect or anything, but I mostly looked at cornerback and edge rusher out of the combine, and then at running back, like, unfortunately, that was kind of a weak class of participants for the combine. Not that the running back class is weak, but how many people ended up doing even anything that weekend? It was kind of a bummer. Like, shout out to Mike Washington for having really one of the top performances at the combine. For a guy his size running that fast, I think he's absolutely going to be on Seattle's radar. The one thing that worries me is how often he fumbles, or how often he fumbled at Arkansas, which I think is like double-digit times. But that's correctable. Like, as Tiki Barber famously made correctable with the way that he carried the ball over time. But otherwise, he's absolutely got some traits that I think could make him a possible Seahawks. Same with Jadarian Price, and whether or not he could be a second-round option for Seattle. So that's generally where I'm going. Wide receiver, I didn't really pay attention too deeply, except for the guy from Mississippi State whose name escapes me right now. Is it Thompson?
Brennan.
Yes, Brennan Thompson. Yeah, he was definitely a high flyer. And Casey Concepcion, as long as he can fixes his drops issue, I think he's got a lot of the tools to be a possible option for the Seahawks.
Brandon, what about you? Who's someone, we were down in Mobile, you got to see some guys in person there, and now you've seen them at the combine. Who are some guys that are standing out to you more that you think fit what Seattle's going to be looking for come the draft?
I'm all about Mekhi Lemon, Yeah. Yeah, I'm just here to play, man. I'm here to do what I do. It's what I do. Yeah. Yeah. I thought that there's I didn't think anybody, let's say, blew up the combine that was going to stand out to us that's not getting taken up ahead of time. Obviously my Jennings Dunker love affair knows no bounds. And that's not going away anytime soon. So, I thought he stood out. I thought the linebackers tested pretty well. The cornerbacks, where we were thinking, I think a lot of us on where value can kind of fit right. If John's really staying in the pocket of value, where cornerback makes a lot of sense. Chris Johnson or Dalen Everett or Malik Muhammad tested well. Colton Hood, I thought, had a solid combine. And Fried, take your pick kind of that. And there was a lot of different guys within that. Even the Arizona State kid was all right. So I think you got some options here as far as you look through at the corner, if that's going to be a pick that they look to make as far as reinforcement goes. Edges, Dani Dennis-Sutton and Derek Moore, I thought, had a pretty good run. I think Malachi Lawrence is an interesting guy. He's got a little bit of some Cliff Averill without the 1.51 10-yard split because he's more of a 1.58. And that was what made Cliff really go, was that, instant first step quickness. I don't know about his fit to the defense. I hear a lot of Seahawks fans talking about Malachi, and I don't know as the fit. This is the thing we're going to learn about Mike Macdonald now, because we don't know about the type of pure edge he's going to really necessarily look for. We got the Ravens. We got what we brought in with DeMarcus Lawrence. But I think that we've got to be very cautionary about looking at those edges that are, benders, arc takers, the guys that can get pushed out the back of a pocket when they don't win. That's not exactly the type of guy I think Macdonald really wants. And with Malachi, that's going to be kind of what you're going to get a lot with him when he can't win. It's a lot of the Bruce Irvin, I couldn't get the edge. Now I'm out the back. And now I've opened up the door for a scrambling quarterback to escape the pocket or elongate the play. So it's kind of interesting on all these guys. I didn't think anybody really blew up, but the offensive lineman I thought tested pretty well too. But nobody was really, to me, super standing out as somebody that was like, oh, this has got to be a Seahawk target on this, outside of kind of that cornerback position that really seemed to break right for us.
Yeah, the cornerback position, definitely. I thought you and Dan and myself, we kind of talked about that in Mobile over numerous nights there about how, like, with Macdonald's defensive edges, he likes those power guys that can really control the tackle and just kind of close the pocket, not necessarily beat around the outside with speed. And I think it's going to be interesting to your point. Like, that's like a Derek Moore, a Zion Young type of edge rusher. So it'll be interesting to see. Dan, for you, who are some guys that stood out for you at the combine that you really went, I think these guys are more Seahawks fits than maybe I initially thought?
Yeah, I spent a lot more time watching the receivers than I thought. And I think it was because shortly before their workout started, we started to get some of these reports and indications that it was looking less likely that Shaheed was going to come back. Fortunately, in this class, there are a bunch of guys that kind of fit that skill set. Some of these smaller sort of slot type receivers with big time speed. Mookie already mentioned it, kind of stole my thunder, but I thought KC Concepcion, if I'm giving him an NFL player comp, it might be Rashid Shaheed. Similar body type. Thought he tested really well. Thought he had the best gauntlet of any receiver there. Like he was straight down that line, caught the ball really, really naturally. Zachariah Branch out of Georgia is another guy that I thought was really explosive. And Deion Burks out of Oklahoma blew me away. I mean, that guy's, what is he, 5'9", 5'10", about 190 pounds, jumping 42 inches. He was explosive. I thought he was really good. So those guys were fun to watch. And then, you mentioned the guys not testing. I saw a list yesterday. Only 6 players did everything at this entire combine. And, we've mentioned a couple of times, we've touched on it, that offensive line's not a huge need this year, but depending on what John does between now and then, if he hedges all of his needs like he usually does, we get to the draft, you can go pure BPA. That interior offensive line group might kind of match up in a couple of spots with some guys that would really fit. And one of those 6 guys that did all the testing is Chase Basantis out of Texas A&M. I thought he had a really, really good session all the way around. His field work was really great, I thought. I think he's a scheme fit. And we all know that the Seahawks pay attention to stuff like that, and that there's probably a little asterisk or a little symbol or logo or some special highlighter pen they use on their board to indicate a guy that did all the testing at the combine. So that was kind of cool to see.
Yeah, honestly, for me, in a lot of ways, like, that edge class is something I'm really paying attention to. Who's going to fit the running back class? There's some guys I like in it. One of them out of UTSA too, which is Henry. I do like him as a potential complementary piece that we could get later on. I did like what Mike Washington did. I know for you, Dan, he was someone that stood out to you in Mobile. The fumbling is the only thing that concerns me with him. But for receiver, I agree. I think receiver's an interesting need. And there's one guy at Mobile that stood out to me. I don't think he really stood out in the combine in a lot of ways, but that's Kevin Coleman Jr. out of Missouri. He's a guy, again, if you lose a Shaheed, you get him and you bring him in and he can add some of that explosive twitchiness stuff that Shaheed did well for us. Again, I don't know if anyone blew me away where I went, yeah, this is like a definite 100% Seahawk, maybe outside of Chris Johnson and Hood there at corner where I went, yeah, like one of those two fall to you at 32, take one of them. And you know, you should be able, and obviously the one guy I'm with Brandon on that I have an absolute complete man crush on is Dunker. If he somehow was there, he'd be a guy that I would go after for sure. And it looks like we unfortunately lost Dan again. So with that being said, guys, is there anything else you want? Oh, Mookie, go ahead.
Well, I think I read your mind as far as what you wanted to bring up. Is like, is there anything else to note in the comment? I was about to ask everybody here what they thought about Jeremy Bernard, former Husky, ended up transferring to Alabama. He looked like he's got that kind of versatility that they, I think, wanted out of Shaheed. But he's not a first round option, maybe like second round, mid-second round, or maybe late or if to early third, depending on how the next couple of months goes. But I think Jeremy Bernard is somebody that I've kept my eye on a bit, just because I liked his game, even when Alabama's not had the best offense by any means over the last couple of years. I think he's interesting. And then getting back to cornerback, Colton Hood to me looks like he's to me one of the most fluid looking. And I told Bryce this the other night, most fluid looking cornerback prospects out there. And at the moment, I think all the mock drafts that have him go into Seattle, this is one of those where it actually makes a whole lot of sense in terms of what Hood's fits in a zone heavy scheme of Macdonald's, I think really matches up well.
Yeah, when I look at Jeremy Bernard, I like the look of him, I like how he moves. He's got a body style where he's a little thicker build for a receiver than what you normally kind of get with these guys. But I got to be honest with you, and I've scouted quite a bit of him on tape. He leaves a lot to be desired on watching him on tape. I want more from him when I walk away. I feel like with what he has naturally and how he's built, he should be giving you more on a football field. I felt like he was also a guy, Mookie, that needed to be out there at the Senior Bowl, and instead he took a pass. And I wanted to see him out there at the Senior Bowl, be a guy that could separate himself from some of those guys that were not maybe as much of these day one, day two type guys. He wasn't out there doing that. So I'm a little bit of a jury out on him kind of guy with it myself.
All right, guys. Well, I think Dan's unfortunately going to leave us here. He's got to do grandfather duty. So, Dan, I will let you say your goodbyes here.
Yeah, before I go, I will just say I heard you guys talking about the corners a lot. One guy that I was really bummed didn't run in Indianapolis because he's become, I think with each passing day, the more I study him, I just wrote a profile on him yesterday, is Brandon Cisse out of South Carolina. Is a guy that the more I watch him, the more I like him. He just looks like, I think of a lot of these guys that we talk about that might be in that range at 32, he's played a lot more press coverage and than a lot of these guys. Like Chris Johnson hardly played it at all at San Diego State, the way that they utilized him. And so we saw him kind of being taught that in Mobile, and it didn't always look great. There's definitely a learning curve there, but I thought Cisse's already really accomplished it at press man, and he looks on tape like a sub 4.4 guy that can play the field side and cover guys all over the field. And he loves to come up and hit in the running game. And that's something obviously that anytime you look for a corner in a Mike Macdonald defense, you're going to want to see. So that's just another guy that I wanted to mention before I get out of here. But yeah, guys, lots coming up. We're going to have a lot to talk about next week. I think we're going to have some significant signings, and possibly I do think we'll have a trade between, now and next week. And that's going to be a lot. That's going to be a fun conversation next week, talking about what the roster looks like then. So sorry, I got to go. Family comes first sometimes, but we'll be roaring to go next week. It's going to be a lot of fun.
You have a good one out there, Dan.
See you, Dan.
See you soon.
See you, boys. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks. All right, guys. Well, let's, considering now, Dan's off, but let's go 12 Q&A. We've got a bunch of them in here. We've got 1,100 people watching us, which, I feel a lot of people would have better things to do on a Thursday night, but, they clearly like listening to us tab and talk. So let's get into this right now. And we got a couple super chats right off the top here. We've got Garth Knight coming in with a $5 donation over on Brandon's side. Goes, you four are the Beatles of Hawk coverage. Love these collaborations. Well, that's some big praise.
That's very kind of you, man. Appreciate you, brother.
Appreciate it, Garth. Love the reference there. Are you guys Beatles fans by any chance, or who's your go-to group for music?
Oh, they're the Beatles. They make such terrific children's music. But I might be one of those people who appreciates some of the solo work that they did more than their act when they were a collective.
Yeah, I like the Beatles. I like all good rock from late 60s to early 2000s. I got places I can pick and choose from all in there.
Yeah, I gotta go. I don't mind the Beatles. I'm more a little bit harder on the rock, so I like my my Nirvana and stuff like that. That's kind of where my ear tends to go a little bit. But Garth, appreciate the super chat. We got one here from Martin Lawrence coming in from across the pond with another one over on the Hawks Nest side of things. A $5 pound donation goes, when free agents leave a team, we can rose tint the review of the players' time with the team and not objectively analyze the decisions not to pay up. And I think that's something that's kind of going on in the chat. And I think going on a lot with the Ken Walker situation is what he did over the final stretch was absolutely amazing. I don't think anyone will take that away, but I think there is a little bit of that rose tinted glasses to him and Shaheed. Would you guys say that's kind of a situation going on?
I think the context with Shaheed and why he could get $18 million a year is, as I said earlier, he did have another part of his season with another team. And at the time he got dealt, he was on an 80 some odd catch pace with the Saints. And Olave was healthy. So it wasn't like Shaheed was a wide receiver one by default. And he's playing with Spencer Rattler and Tyler Shuck. And while Shuck honestly did way better than I thought as a rookie, he's not as good as Sam Darnold. So I think that Shaheed is going to succeed in a pass-heavy offense with a quarterback who's competent. But in the context of this offense and the fact that Seattle doesn't pass a whole lot and the fact that he's not going to be the number one option and may not even still be the number two option next year, that's where you go. Do you want to pay $15 to $18 million a year for somebody who is not even the undisputed number two on the roster? So that's where I can understand, Seattle not wanting to re-sign Shaheed at a certain price, even though I would love for him to stay.
Yeah, you just can't overpay on these guys. I am a little surprised reading online out there at times where people are just kind of almost a blank check that you just have to do this, and I just don't understand that because that's not how we got to a Super Bowl. If blank check city was the route we were going to go, we would have just signed Geno to whatever he wanted. If blank city was the way we wanted to go, we would have just signed DK at the time he was wanting to be signed to the contract he wanted to be signed. People don't understand, I think, a little bit of that in retrospect is that those trades happened in part because Seattle was not willing to up the ante for what those particular players wanted to be paid. So if it's worked so well for you in recent history, if it's brought you the ultimate of results, why not stay in that lane?
Yeah, and that's kind of what I agree with too in this. And I'm going to go to a comment here. Johnny comes in and goes, Kenneth Walker is worth $15 million. Shaheed is worth $20 million. We would not have won the division or Super Bowl without them. They are not easy to replace.
Well, so let's unpack that a little bit. I think it's a good phrasing on this, but let's unpack this a little bit. First off, not easy to replace. I don't think anybody is quantifiably saying that to do these moves, we can just go find the easy Rayleigh replacement over here on it. It's not what we're saying. So we want to make sure what we're saying with this is that, yeah, it's going to hurt, but you don't want to overpay for that pain. And is he worth $15 million? Is he worth the Saquon Barkley money? Is he worth $3.5 million more than a Dalvin Cook who just signed his deal last year? I don't know on that. Oh, James Cook. Sorry. I'm getting old now. I'm putting all these names together, but I think Shaheed's going to be at $20 million, quite frankly. Yep. I think there's a real argument here. You could say he's going to be the second receiver as far as the highest paid behind Alec Pierce, as much because he also provides the special teams value. So whatever team signs him can say, and we're also getting the best punt returner and kick returner in their sport. Yeah, that's going to be $20 million in a weak free agent class. And that's easily $5 million more you're overpaying. So it's like you do get too many of these players that you're overpaying, and you might look individually at one, go, well, it's $2 million here. Well, it's $3 million here. You suddenly get to like, we're overpaying in like $16, $17, $18 million on these deals. And that's a player or two you've lost off your roster you could have added otherwise. So there is a price to be paid by just basically walking up with a blank check and being like, well, we just have to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like K9, whether he's worth $15 million or not, running backs are known to be quite replaceable. And in a Shanahan-inspired or Shanahan-based scheme, like Terrell Davis got replaced by, and I might not be going in correct order here, by Orlando Scary, who got replaced by Mike Anderson, who got replaced by like Clinton Porters, who got replaced by Reuben Drones. So that would be amazing if Seattle could kind of keep that pipeline. And those are all different running backs, different types of running back styles that we saw in Denver under Mike Shanahan. For the Seahawks, it's hard to replace K9 specific skill set. I mean, that type of speed and agility and ability to accelerate the open field, that's not super easy to replace. But running back, there are plenty of running backs out there who can at least still be functional in this offense as long as the offensive line doesn't regress. So that's kind of the whole value at the running back position. Hence, somebody like Miles Sanders had such a great time in Philadelphia and they upgraded to Saquon Barkley. But the fact that Miles Sanders even had a career like that in Philadelphia tells you, and not being very good anywhere else, tells you the value of the offensive line versus the value of the running back. Is Shaheed easy to replace? I mean, he was only here half the year. So we experienced the offense before November, and then while he was with the team from November onward. I would caution one thing about the special teams. Shaheed was great as a returner. Absolutely amazing. Before him, Torrey Horton had already returned a punt for a touchdown. Derek Young was getting good kick returns. So, I am not worried about the return game in Shaheed's absence. But I believe that for guys like Shaheed, their value is now going to increase in a wide receiver free agent market if they do special teams, mostly because the NFL got what they wanted out of this dynamic kickoff tweak, and that more returns, the return rate is like 70 some odd percent versus the 20 or 30 some odd percent the year before. So there's going to be that added value for Shaheed. But again, is Shaheed somebody you want to pay 18 to 20 million a year for while he's not the number one, or right now, not even the number two option? So you would end up paying, you got to extend JSN eventually, right? So you could be looking at like a really hefty sum to 3 wide receivers and a not pass heavy offense.
Well, and I think that's the other thing to the point here, like Brandon stated, you overpay these guys a couple million here, and all of a sudden you start doing that on a lot of these contracts. And then when you actually need to go get a player, you can't because you don't actually have the room to go do it. And now you got to try and figure out, okay, who am I cutting? How much of a dead cap hit am I taking to cut this player to try and acquire this because this guy's not performing to that level? Again, I think K9 could be worth that. I think Shaheed is going to probably be in that ballpark. I just don't think that number is a number that Seattle views as a worth it when they have other guys, again, that I look at and I go, JSN, Devin Witherspoon, they view them as core pieces to this run that they're about to go on, that they're going to have the bank and the money to back up those trucks to actually pay those guys. And again, I love Kenneth Walker. I love what he did. I love what Shaheed brought, but Shaheed's biggest factor was special teams, 100%. On offense, yeah, he did some things here and there, but he never really gelled into this scheme and this system, I think, in the ways that we had hoped. Like, they tried to hit him deep. Me and Brandon kept calling for it constantly, and there's the one time they did it in the one playoff game, but outside of that, it was a struggle. In the Super Bowl, we missed him twice in situations where we finally were, hey, now let's try this. Let's throw it deep over the top to Shaheed, but it took us all the way up to the Super Bowl and the NFC Championship game to finally get to that point. So again, I'm not saying that neither one of these players is not exceptional and they're not worth the value that they're going to get on free agency. I just don't think that value makes sense for Seattle.
One other last thing I'll put on this is that every time John Schneider has gone outside of the second Marshawn Lynch deal, so the third Marshawn Lynch contract, the Chris Carson money, the 1-year deal to Eddie Lacy, the 1-year deal to Carlos Hyde, the 1-year deal to Rashad Penny after you got him off his rookie deal where you gave him $7 million on a 1-year contract. Every one of those deals blew up in John's face, including the third Marshawn Lynch deal where you had to eat a ton of dead money so he could go play in Oakland for his send-off. That's something that John's got to take into account here a little bit, and I think we got to take into account as well when looking at this running back position. This is part of why so many teams are kind of hesitant to get themselves into this barrel, because this is what tends to happen when you do.
Yep. The cruel irony is Kenneth Walker is by far the healthiest back that they've actually drafted and had start for the last few years, because Penny had some catastrophic injuries. Chris Carson, unfortunately, his career ended with a neck injury, but he had several. His career started with a broken ankle, or a severe ankle injury. So Walker, he's had minor injuries here and there, and then this year he's finally healthy, but still, like, he's going to be probably not in a range Seattle's comfortable with. The one thing that I think is valid regarding the Seahawks offense is you take away K9, you take away Shaheed, and you don't know what you're getting with Torrey Horton's health. This is a much slower offense. So you're going to have to have that speed element at the running back position, or it doesn't have to be K9 fast, but you have to have something respectable. And then especially at the wide receiver position, somebody who you have to respect over the top, who's not Jackson Smith and Jigba. So those are just things that I'm sure Schneider will figure out. It's just an acknowledgement of the consequence of not re-signing them, but you can replace them to some degree, not going to be like for like, at a cheaper cost.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. I agree with you. The speed definitely goes down. But Mookie, you forgot to mention the most talented running back that we drafted that basically could never stay on the field for more than 3 drives in a game, and that's CJ Procise. Do you not remember the talent level of a CJ Procise that we took out of Notre Dame? He was going to revolutionize that Seahawks running game and celebrated a touchdown run versus the Eagles and fell into the end zone and broke his shoulder.
Yep, that was he was special. He was special for those couple of games he was healthy. And unless you forget that Christian Michael was totally healthy, but just didn't really play the running back position all that well.
Yeah, it's been
so let's see what else is in this chat, guys. Let's see. We've got one from John Robinson here. Goes, I can see the Seahawks signing Cam Jordan. Mike loves big edges. He would want to win a championship, and he wouldn't affect comp picks. That's another component to this, right? Like, you could get some 3rd-round comp picks for a lot of these guys you're going to lose to the contracts they could potentially sign, right, in 2027, which, as we know, there is a lot of talent potentially in that 2027 draft class.
Yeah, I think it's as well as it gives you the flexibility with knowing you're getting those comp picks to where if we can't, because there's a possibility we walk into this free agency and where we're at right now, and the price is kind of too high across the board. And John goes, I'm going to do a little bit more of what I've done in the past, which is kind of, not that I'm not going to spend the money, not that I'm not going to be aggressive, but my timing of when I strike will be more maybe training camp or the trade deadline. And so that this kind of leads into maybe where he sits back and goes, hey, maybe somebody becomes available with that down the line on this. Let me keep that flexibility for that at that time to drop. And if I've got those draft picks that I know I'm getting ahead of time, now I can make a Shaheed-like trade again next year and know I'm getting those picks at least back as far as a return goes. So it makes me more willing to do so.
If Jordan's a free agent, that would affect the comp pick depending on the cost, unless they're implying that it would be a very, very cheap deal. If he was like Jordan,
he's on a void year, so he's technically a free agent. Yeah.
So, but yeah, the comp pick thing will matter to a degree in the sense that I'm curious to see how many more cap casualties we get across the league. That's the thing. The free agent market is one thing, but then the free agent market increases a little bit with some cap casualties that we haven't even thought of. Like somebody just mentioned in the chat that Tremaine Edmonds of the Bears just got released. And
Neil Hunter just got a new deal. He got a 1-year extension at $40 million, including $30.7 million signing bonus.
Ooh, yeah. Well, I'd say he's earned it. And that Houston front, if Seattle had Houston's front in addition to what they already have in the interior, the NFL would actually have to intervene and call a stop to the Seahawks defense because it would just be unfair to opposing quarterbacks. But I was about to say the comp pick thing, if they sign some cap casualties, that doesn't matter for the comp pick formula whatsoever. So you could see Schneider making some moves and trying to get some guys, even if it's not on cheap deals, even if it's a multi-year deal with a guy who's, just been a release only because he's a cap casualty, not because he's a bad player or anything, then you don't have to worry about the comp pick formula getting offset and then you end up with nothing next year.
Here's an interesting one. MWN comes in and goes, one mistake, I think he meant to type John Schneider made, was not putting the transition tag on Ken Walker, hedging just in case Walker left.
You don't want to put a transition tag because if somebody matches and if somebody puts in an offer sheet and you don't match, you don't get any draft compensation. So the minute you put a transition or franchise tag on somebody, you automatically don't get a comp pick. And then if it's a non-exclusive tag and you don't match, then they have to give up 2 first-round picks. They are absolute. There are no running backs in the NFL who are worth 2 first-round picks. So on the transition tag, there's a reason why only 7 players have gotten it over the last 14 years. There is way too much risk in using the transition tag. Just because it's cheaper doesn't mean it's less risky. In fact, it's more risky because, again, you could end up not re-signing that guy, and you're out. You're shit out of luck. You don't get anything in return.
Wasn't the poison pill a transition situation?
Yes, and that's why they had to change that because of the Steve Hutchinson got the transition tag over the franchise tag. Tim Ruskell basically, digging his own grave the minute that he did that, and Minnesota putting in the poison pill that meant it was impossible for Seattle to match, and that's why he signed Nate Burleson as a revenge, as kind of a revenge. It was the same contract.
Oh God,
years,
right,
$49 million.
Here's one from Amy Holmes, moderator of my chat here on the Hawks Eye. She goes, we still don't know if K9 can stay healthy as an RB1 for a whole year. He stayed healthy because he was splitting time. You do that 2 times, and that's a big percentage of your cap.
Yeah, I agree with her. Thinking with this too is that though he's only maybe missed a couple of games in his career, every year leading into this year, he was getting beat up by the end of the year too, and not able to sustain under that load as you were trying to put him on it. Under prior years. This is part of why they made the transition this year to splitting the carries, and they stayed with it, even with many of us going, got to go with one or the other, got to go with one or the other. And so like, there's a bit of I got to protect this guy a little bit and how I utilize him. Okay. If that's the case, do I need to be paying him at top of the market bell cow prices that I would be paying for a running back at that point? Probably not, especially too, because there is a couple of limitations to his game. He is not a pass protector back there, and he's probably average at best as a pass catcher. And so that is a part of the formula. I think you got to break into this.
Mm-hmm. I have no disagreement there at all. And then I'm looking for one here. John McGrath comes in with draft Dunker and trade Bradford would be my dream come true.
Oh, dude.
I don't know.
We're going to be, I'll be standing on the table with the shirt off, spinning it up in the air on our draft coverage if we draft Dunker with the first round pick. I won't even care.
I'll be there with you on that one.
You couldn't go wrong. Like him and Logan Jones, I imagine whenever they get drafted, they're going to be starters right away, wherever they end up getting drafted. But Dunker is going to be like an immediate fan favorite wherever he goes, especially if it's Seattle. Imagine if Seattle does get Dunker, and then you have him and Gray Zabel as like the perfect meme offensive lineman, but positively.
Peanut butter and jelly.
Yes.
So I think Johnny brings up a point. He goes, until someone can explain why 5 to 10 million ruins long-term opportunity, I'll keep my position. This is in regards to our conversation on adding the, extra money here and there, because that does add up very quickly depending on how that money is in that 5 or 10 million is in over the salary cap. It's in the construction of the contract. Like you could get hit with some dead cap money that sucks. That could be 10 million preventing you from getting a player that you actually need.
Yeah, the price comes due on this. I think a lot of times we think about the NFL being just ultimately you can move the numbers around wherever you want to move them. Part of the reason that the Philadelphia Eagles aren't in on the Maxx Crosby deal is because they put their cap situation in hell. And you look at the Minnesota Vikings last year and all the money they spent and how many 12s were looking at them going, see, this is what we need to be doing. We need to be doing that. And now you're looking at them literally here over the last couple of days, making some really tough decisions that they probably don't want to have to make, including potentially moving Grenard. So they get themselves under their cap. And this is where it gets really tough in the NFL when you're in this situation, and that this cap is tough. And people look at the 61 million, I think it's like a lot of money. But when you start really unpacking it, you got 2 contract extensions you're going to give JSN and Witherspoon. That's going to be new money on the books this year. Some people I see in the fandom on this are a little confused on this, that somehow we're going to have these contracts inject in 3 or 4 years down the line and we're going to save money. It's not going to be the case. Bonus money will be on this books that will increase both of their costs this season. You got to create about a $13 million reserve every year going into the season for draft picks and for normal order of business that you have to do during the season. So there goes 13 more million off the books. This money goes fast. And it is one where you don't have everybody you can spend on and then have extra money left over. It's how can I best apply the money? And if you're overpaying, you're not best applying the money. You're letting market prices decide what you do on that. And that's, to me, that's more of a little bit more of the fear-based approach, more of, hey, we can be smarter in our approach. We can find value out there in our approach. We don't have to overpay because we're going to be smarter than the average bear in how we go about our business.
Yeah. The Seahawks have been very good, especially in more recent years, of not putting everything on the credit card and then deferring it for a while. And then eventually that credit card bill comes due. And I think that they're trying to be as responsible as they can so that they don't have to make so many tough cap casualty and trade decisions, the following year down the line. So, as you said, 60 something million or 58 million, I think, is what their cap space is right now. You sign a couple of free agents, and you got to make the draft pick reserves. You've also got, even like Brandon Peely and other restricted free agents, if they get tendered or even signed to $1.5 million year, $2 million a year, like that's going to chip away slowly but surely. So that's just the nature of the business. This is not the NBA where you've got these ridiculous cap. You got to be like a super economist to figure out an NBA salary cap. But in the NFL, you've got a true hard cap, and you can't play around. There's not a lot of wiggle room there.
And if I may, just one other part real quick, Bryce, is the injury part of this to the running backs. I just mentioned the whole litany of a history here of us actually paying running backs with John Schneider, and how every single one of them has failed. Not partial failure, not one fails and one success. Every one of those turned out to be bad deals in retrospect. And what we know about the NFL is that this is also a general truism about the NFL. That Saquon Barkley deal looked great for the Philadelphia Eagles. He didn't look like the same running back last year. The Josh Jacobs deal looked great for the Green Bay Packers the first year they signed it. He didn't look like the same running back last year. It's a position that you go and you pay money on, and boy, it's not usually good money spent just in general terms, even with a guy that you don't have an injury history on, which we kind of do a little bit here with Walker.
You can go back, honestly, in my opinion, Brandon, you can go all the way back to Ricky Watters in the Seattle history of running backs. And Sean Alexander was probably your most durable, but once you gave him that next deal after the MVP season, what happened to Sean Alexander? He got injured. It was the wrist. It was the foot. Then we went to Julius Jones, and we were bringing in Edger and James off the street after his stint with Arizona. Justin Forsett became our most durable running back at a point there until we got to Marshawn Lynch, and he was our most durable back for about 3 years there. And then, to your point, once we started having more contract extensions, the hernia started and all that. So I agree with you. I've always been of the mentality running backs are the one term I've always been told is running backs are a dime a dozen. You can always find a running back as long as you've got the O-line and the scheme and whatever you're doing. You can plug a running back in and get some sort of production level that you need to get out. And yeah, it may not be elite, but it's enough to keep your offense going and functioning. But this one here from Sean's kind of interesting. He goes, what do you guys think about Schneider's comments tonight? He kind of implied the numbers leaked aren't accurate and negotiations are ongoing, because I believe he had his 710 show today, right?
Yeah.
Did you guys hear at all what that was about?
I mean, the agents are playing games right now. We can see it with Crosby and what's going on with him with the Daily. It's the Bears. No, it's the Cowboys. No, it's where there's definitely people doing some stuff in the background to drive this stuff, and it's not necessarily coming from the teams. You never know on this stuff until it gets to the last minute what the price is. But I do think that the numbers that are being talked about with Walker and Shaheed are pretty accurate on the bottom line of it, as much because of the supply and demand issue. Alec Pierce is going to be off the board in a heartbeat, and Shaheed's going to suddenly find himself as the best receiver on the open market, with a lot of teams who have some money to spend and have a need for a wide receiver. Like, for instance, the Raiders, who have his former coach, who he pounded the table to trade for at the trade deadline last year.
Yep. And for Walker, $15 million a year, the reason why we would bring that up is Breece Hall got tagged at 14 point some odd million. And like Breece Hall and Kenneth Walker have got fairly similar stats over their respective careers. They've been running behind some god-awful offensive lines. And Breece Hall had a very serious injury to start as a rookie with a torn ACL. So he's actually played fewer games than Walker. But still, if Breece Hall is getting tagged at 14 point some odd million, Kenneth Walker, I think it starts at the 13 to $14 million range, because I don't think anybody is saying that Breece Hall is undeniably a better running back than Kenneth Walker. That's just that the game's the game. Like, that's not McCaffrey money or anything, but that's certainly top 5, top 7 running back money. And that's what Walker's probably going to command.
Johnny comes in with one. He goes, if Shard was not injured, I would agree. We're a running team with no running back now. Would be good for some continuity. And that's where I think an Algier or a Brian Robinson Jr. that has continuity with your new OC. And again, you can find running backs in the draft. The continuity, the biggest continuity factor in a run game isn't so much the running back as it is the O-line and the 5 guys you have up front that know how to get to the second level, that know how to communicate. And we've heard Mark Schlereth talk about it for eons about offensive line play being like, the problem is so many guys don't play together long enough that they actually know how to get off a tandem block together and which guy's climbing and when he's supposed to and what that whole thing goes on. And when I talked to Brian Baldinger at the, Mobile, Alabama for the Senior Bowl, the biggest thing he said to me out of the entire conversation was Seattle is going to be in such good shape with their running game because they'll have 5 linemen coming back to it.
Yeah, I think it's a good point on your part with it. And Johnny, I totally get where you're coming on this. I understand the sense of urgency here because it is a place that's empty and you don't have the viable necessarily solution on it. I just think to what Bryce just said is the important part. We had a case study put out in front of us. We had the analytic people leading into the draft of you taking 2 second-round picks. You're the only organization in 10 years that's gone with running backs in the first or second round in back-to-back years, with the exception of the Bengals back in 2013. Didn't work for them either with Giovanni Bernard and Jeremy Hill. But let's throw that out the window. You had an opportunity here to say, okay, we have no offensive scheme in place. Our defense is craptastic. Our offensive line sucks. So for those people out there that think that the star running back can be the driving force that can overcome all that, let's see. And we got proven that that's not the case, that's not going to happen. And then slowly now, as we've gotten the scheme right, as the quarterback gets more viable and better, as the defense gets better, as the coaching and the offensive scheme are in place, as the line with the continuity that Bryce just brought up, as all of that comes together, now the running game finds effectiveness. One is the driver here. We got to pick one or the other as the driver. I'll go with the secondary force here and buy into it because I've watched it play out in practicality. I've gotten to see it with the Giants, with Saquon Barkley going from there, topping out at 1,300 yards, going to now an offensive line that's one of the best in football, and now he goes up to almost 2,000 yards per season. It's not that those guys can't have an effect or an impact. It's that they're not the driving force. So why pay him as the driving force?
Agreed. And like for me, even with, with my coaching and stuff, it's, can I get my 5 guys up front to work as a single organism, and then I'll plug the running backs in, and it's, okay, find the hole, find the crease, hit it, and go. Get north-south as quickly as you can and get up into that, hole that you're running to. If you don't have 5 guys that are on the same page up front with a scheme that works to those 5 guys, you're dead in the water. And to your point, Brandon, we've seen that over and over again with this group. We've tried different running backs. We've tried different schemes. We finally have that portion working now with a defense, with a quarterback that is fine handing the ball off 20 times a game, and it worked. And it's what worked in 2013 as well with that unit. Hey, Russell, you're a rookie or a second-year quarterback. Hand the ball off to beast mode, make a couple throws a game that are key for us in plays, and we'll be just fine. So it's a formula that works, and it stood the test of time. And we got one here from Johnny. $10, Johnny. Appreciate your super chat. Thanks for all you do. Johnny. Back-to-back champs. Let's get it. 100%. It's going to be a fun offseason.
Yeah, Johnny.
Fun. When we appreciate, your comments, Johnny, and everyone's comments here. And John McGrath's got a good one here, guys. He goes, keeping Benton is the most important part of us having solid running back protection, hands down. That might be the biggest thing about this offseason, guys. If we draft running backs, if we bring in an Algier, Robinson, whoever, the fact that we kept John Benton, Justin Outen, and that entire basically offensive group outside of your quarterback coach and your offensive coordinator, you're bringing back the entire offensive group that understands the scheme inside out. And in some respects, I think what's interesting for me on this with the hire of Brian Fleury is you're getting a guy that has been with Kyle for 7 years. Kubiak was there for 1 year, and the Kubiak side of the Shanahan tree, as Brandon, you and I both know, this is a little bit different. You're now getting a guy that has been immersed in the Shanahan tree. And even in his press conference said, hey, there are things in this offense that we can do better and differently because Clint either wasn't there or just didn't use it the way it was. And so now you have that with the continuity of what's worked. This offense could be better in a lot of areas than what we even saw this year, I think.
You're right, and I want to bring up one key example on this because one of you two brought up Denver and the situation of the pliability with Shanahan, and this is the Shanahan scheme that this comes from. This comes from this route, right? And you mentioned all those running backs that he spun through. What did the Denver Broncos get to do because they didn't pay Clinton Portis the type of contract people might be advocating for Kenneth Walker to be getting right here? What was the flip side counter of that? Do you guys remember? Because they didn't do that.
They made it to the NFC. That would be really hard.
No, the player they directly got because they didn't sign Clinton Portis. They went a different direction. You guys can't remember this. I'm gonna blow your minds.
This is like
Champ Bailey.
Champ Bailey.
Oh, that's right. They got Champ. Yep, that's right.
Was that a trade
so there's
or a free agent signing?
You traded Clinton Portis for Champ Bailey.
Champ Bailey.
Now I remember. Yeah.
So like, this is what I'm talking about is there's a price to be paid here when you go this route versus the other route of what you could do as far as more viable, more impactful, more of a game changer. And that's in the very same scheme we're running right now. That's in the same outside zones type scheme that running backs are fungible. You can rotate them on in. This has been proven at San Francisco. It's been proven in Washington. It's been proven back in Denver. It's been proven time and time again. It's good to have a difference maker if you can get it, but if you can't get it, it's not the end all be all in this scheme.
And it should be worth reiterating, just because I believe that the Seahawks have a need at running back does not mean spend a lot of money or spend a lot of draft capital. I could go into my closet right now and go, I need a 6-pack of socks. I need socks, but socks are generally easily replaceable. That's a lot different than I need dress shirts. I need buttoned up dress shirts so I can go out to business meetings or whatever. Those are going to cost a little bit more. So, there's certain things that you might need that don't cost as much, or you shouldn't allocate as much money to. So they might need running backs to replace Walker and certainly Charbonnet for as long as he's out. But that doesn't mean go spend another first on a running back or go spend, pay Travis Etienne $12 million a year. We had somebody in our field goals comment section, so shout out to our field goals readers, Bam Bam Cam, who suggested Najee Harris and Mike Washington as the 1-2. And I got to say, first and foremost, absolutely no on Najee Harris coming off an Achilles injury.
Yeah,
but,
no thanks.
Like Mike Washington, all right, fine. There's one. But if you get somebody who's a veteran running back like a Tyler Algier, you go Tyler Algier and Mike Washington, and then Kenny Mack comes back. Maybe Jacardier Wright builds upon how he looked last preseason. That's fine to me.
I got one other point to make about that Denver Bronco tie-in that we're doing here with the Shanahan tree. What was the other crucial part to the success of that Denver Broncos running game? A certain individual
lineman they could move in space.
Well, a certain individual though that was super key, and Pete Carroll actually, when he became the head coach of the Seattle Seahawks, tried to get this guy, Gibbs, the offensive line coach that understood the scheme and how they turned through running backs, and they even to a point with offensive lines, right? They had to keep kind of rebuilding that group, but one constant was Alex Gibbs. You now have that with John Benton potentially here with a guy that understands the scheme. He's gotten 5 offensive linemen together. He's drafted Gray Zabel. Sundell was the starting center that he picked coming out of camp and all these different things. And now there's an opportunity where what if we get a Algier or Brian Robinson Jr. or one of these other running backs potentially on the market, and all of a sudden we have another 1,000-yard runner. And now that's what Seattle's starting to get known for, is we're just turning out, hey, we sign Algier for 2 years. Because here's the thing I'll say about Charbonnet. And I love Zach Charbonnet. I don't know if the Zach Charbonnet we get to see at this point this year is really going to look like Zach Charbonnet. Coming off the injury, depending when he gets back, we don't know if it'll be October, November. Like, we have no idea when he's going to get back. He just had surgery a few weeks ago. We might even see a situation where Charbonnet's in a contract year. He might get an extension from Seattle for 1 year on a prove-it deal to reset his own market value in 2027, because they don't know what they're going to get with Charbonnet this year and half the season they may have him. So this is, again, where I look at it and I go, the running back situation in Seattle is going to be by committee in more ways than most think.
Yeah, I think that's fair. There's outlook on it.
And here we go. This is a good one from Catalyst here over on from Brandon's side there on the Hawks nest. Goes, I'll take an offensive line that's continuity and good investments into it rather than overpaying a star running back. Do you remember what the Eagles run game looked like in 2002 with freaking Miles Sanders?
Well, 22. 2002, I think it was still.
Oh, sorry, 22, yeah.
Well, Buckhalter there, but yeah. There was a point I made a few minutes ago with Miles Sanders had the best year of his career in Philadelphia, and then Carolina signs it to some stupid contract, and he's out of the rotation by then, and then he's in Dallas, and Javonte Williams ends up outperforming him. And Javonte ends up getting a nice contract extension, but it's like at $8 million a year. And I think if Kenneth Walker costs $8 million a year, I wouldn't hesitate to re-sign Kenneth Walker. But if he's not costing $8 million a year, then it's going to be a different story. And I know that the way contracts are structured, $15 million a year is not always the literal $15 million a year. It's the signing bonus, it's the cash spent in year one, it's the guarantees, it's all that stuff. So there's a lot more that goes into it than just the APY that these players get that would drive Seattle away from certain free agents that they would like to re-sign and gravitate toward guys that they end up signing.
All right.
I'm not against looking for a difference maker of the position, but have it be a market opportunity rather than a market overpayment.
Agreed. Find that diamond in the rough, so to speak, that you can pay a little bit on a lower deal that surprises you, where then, hey, if they reset their market value, great. We got them for 2 years. They did a fantastic job, and we're hunting again. That's an okay way to live a little bit. John comes in with this one. I love this shit. GM Brando is another level of intensity. Hey, why do you think he's the one sitting on my thumbnail in the middle of the table with a disgruntled look on his face and the paper in his hand? That is exactly why that's Brandon right there, because he's the one leading the charge.
It's very true. Super intense all the time.
Oh, here's a good one. This one in here from Ben goes, what are the maximum comp picks Hawks could get in 2027?
4. And that's because, well, I'm trying to think about it. If there was a minority hire from the Seahawks organization next year, I think that could get them extra comp picks because it would just be that year's draft, I'm pretty sure. But otherwise, directly from free agency only, you can only get 4. So let's say everybody walks for Seattle who's comp pick eligible. So that means Jobe, Mafe, Woolen, Walker, Shaheed, everybody. And they sign no comp pick eligible free agents. They sign none. So the score is like 8-0. They can only get 4, but it would be the top 4. So it'd be the 4 highest comp picks out of that group would be the ones that they get. So I think it's more likely than not they end up with comp picks.
If you lost all those and you just signed wave guys, it might be legit like 3 3s and 1 4 on the back of that if all of it was a loss cumulatively because of the amount you're losing. They bring it all. Nobody knows the secret sauce and the formula and how they divvy it up exactly, but based on history, nobody else is going to have that kind of loss like you will.
Agreed. Sean comes back with GM Brando has me ready to run through a wall for an incentive-based, non-guaranteed contract.
Yeah, let's get it.
Yeah. There we go. That works. And we got one here from Industry Worth goes, where is my pumpkin?
She's scratching on the door right now.
Oh, there we go. Pumpkin wants to be a part of the show. She's coming in to replace Dan on our show.
She is. She's like, let me in.
Let me in. Let me be a part of this. Let's see. Where else do we got in here? We'll go for a couple more minutes here, everybody. We're trying to keep these shows a little bit shorter than what they are normally. You know what? I want to talk about this a little bit. So Callis comes in and goes, run blocking was still gelling as well. We lost Sundell partially through the season, and the line shuffled a bit. I don't know how you guys felt, but I felt when Sundell was out, he, I think, got an opportunity to sit and watch Olu, who's a good run blocking center. And when he came back in, I thought Sundell's run blocking got quite a bit better from where it was earlier in the year in understanding the targeting and where to go, because it seemed like something clicked for him, I think, as a center in the scheme a little bit more than maybe it was earlier in the year. Do you guys feel differently about that?
He certainly looked like a better run blocker, and I will defend Kenneth Walker's touchdown in the Super Bowl to death over the marginal holding call that was on Sundell.
So bad.
That would have robbed Walker of maybe a 200-yard game. But that aside, I think one play that typifies Sundell's improvement as a run blocker and just the meanness to his game was the third Kenneth Walker touchdown in the 49ers win, where it's a 3rd and goal and it's far enough out that it's not a high percentage play to get a touchdown out of. But from the shotgun snap, Sundell just barrels in and to that second level and takes out that 49ers defender. Might have been a safety, might have been a cornerback, but he moved so damn fast and so effectively and landed the crunching block to spring Walker free for the score. And this is where Sundell's high-end athleticism is starting to be that plus in this running game. So I think that Sundell has, to me, absolutely earned his spot on the offensive line next year. And I know that we've been talking about in previous syndicates, and it's been mentioned in the comments, mentioned in the field goals comments. Hey, if Seattle can get Tyler Linderbaum, we can move Sundell to right guard and send Bradford out to Siberia or wherever. I think Sundell is just fine at center.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think a better option is to look more right guard as your long term and roll with him, because he is the pure athletic fit for the model type you're looking for. You'd obviously love to have a top end center, but if you absent that, a guy that's just tremendously solid who keeps getting better with the more experience he's being given, why not roll with this guy? And I don't know if he got better to your question on that, Bryce, but I just know he across the board got better. I felt like Drake Thomas, Tayakata, and Jalen Sundell, the more action they got throughout the course of the season, it just felt like the better they got across the board, kind of in totality.
Sundell gives me the vibes of a potential Robbie Tobeck type of center for the Seahawks, where he's never going to stand out and be a, hey, he's one of the top 5 centers in the NFL or whatever, but he's going to be such a good, consistent starter in the middle of that offensive line that you're not going to notice him where you're going to be like, man, I really wish we had an upgrade at center. Like, our center is so bad. That's kind of how I view it. And yeah, I agree with you maybe to a point, Brandon, that whole group got better throughout the year, but it felt like something clicked a little bit more for Sundell. It just didn't seem like he was having as many issues moving people as he did earlier on. And I think it just maybe, hey, sometimes when you get to sit on the bench and, yes, he was injured. He wasn't, he got benched, but he was injured. And you get to watch somebody do it and they're having success and there's little things you can pick up. Then when you get that opportunity to come back in, you excel at it. And, I think it's going to be an interesting thing. We got one here that I want to bring up. John McGrath, pairing Algier with a healthy McIntosh and Helani sounds like a great plan, and draft a running back too. Sign me up. Okay, I've been getting this a lot in my Discord, and I'm kind of pushing back a little bit. I want to get your guys' thoughts. Kenny McIntosh, how much do you guys think he's going to impact the Seahawks running back room next year? We're talking about a guy coming off of basically in his pro career 2 pretty significant leg injuries. He obviously lost the first year with a bad knee injury. Now he lost this past season with a torn ACL. He wasn't known for his speed coming out of Georgia. He was a 7th round pick. How much do you think he's going to factor into this? Because I'm getting a lot of people like super excited for Kenny McIntosh season, basically. How do you guys feel that's going to play out?
I think he's a burst guy more than he's a speed guy, which is going to help him in this system because that gives him enough juice to be able to do it as long as his leg is 100%. I think that the scenario that the poster just posted is one that's on the right point. You're not counting on him at that point. He becomes the 4th guy in the rotation because you're going to draft a guy in addition to going out there and getting Algier. So there's not pressure with it. He's just a part of the stocking up of the 4 stack. And I think he's done enough to think that he's in the mix on that 4 stack. Depends on where they're at with the health on him and how much. Obviously, we only know what the doctors know on this about where he's going to come back and how much confidence they have that he's going to be able to come back to snuff. But if that's the case, I think, he's perfectly fine and suited into the system, and have a year where he comes in there and he takes some of the carries here and there as a kind of fill-in. I think he could be just fine in that role.
Yeah, the thing with McIntosh is I think he's faster than that 40-yard dash indicated without being an absolute burner. But again, it is more burst than long yardage speed. When it comes to him, I think that he could have a lot of value as a receiving back. And that was one of the things that made him such an intriguing late round option coming out of Georgia, was his ability to be a good pass catcher while also being a good pass protector. But is he an every down back? I don't think so. So he's more of a 3rd down back, and Algier would be back to being a starter. People forget Algier was the starter for Atlanta, and then they drafted Bijan. So Algier being a running back 1, I believe, is very realistic for Seattle. And then for Helani, Helani is a guy who's a willing pass protector. He's similarly a good receiving back. I just think he's kind of a poor man Charbonnet in a way with his running style and his strengths and weaknesses. He could certainly be a factor on special teams, as has Kenny Mack before. But those guys are on very limited sample sizes in terms of their effectiveness and what they can do in an offense while also being major injury question marks.
Yeah, for me, again, like I think there's a role for Kenny Mack potentially, but I also see a situation where Kenny Mack ends up being potentially on your practice squad, depending on how many running backs you do bring into this equation, and Helani, and when Charbonnet is going to be back and be healthy. I like what I saw from Kenny Mack when he was healthy, the bursts and stuff that we saw at the late end of last year in the Ryan Grubb offense, where it was like, oh, look, like Kenny can actually slash and cut through, and that 10 to 15 yard burst is huge, and he finishes runs strong. It's one of those things where I just, like, some people in my Discord have been and chats and DMs have been like, oh, he has the opportunity to be like a running back 2. And I'm like, no, I don't think that's a realistic option. He's a good change of pace guy. He's a guy that potentially even has some value, because wasn't it this year when he got injured, they were trying him out as a kick returner?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He was. In fact, we were all there, I think, 2 years ago in separate. We didn't know each other at the time, or Bryce, you knew Dan. Yeah. When Kenny was among those who was getting kick return options. And then after we cut B. Williams, like, Kenny became the kick returner.
Yeah, after that experiment failed.
Yes.
John's got an interesting one. He goes, assistant GM Mookie adds a clause to Anthony Bradford's contract. If you ever have a passing grade of under 5 again, you'll be exiled to Siberia.
No, we saved the passing grade under 5 for Mekhi Becton. And like I know somebody mentioned in the comments, and it was mentioned in field goals, hey, maybe Seattle could bring in Mekhi Becton. Like, dude, if Mekhi Becton wasn't good enough for that Chargers offensive line, then he has no place with the Seahawks.
You mean the Swiss cheese they rolled out in the New England in the playoff game there? They got Herbert killed. Like,
yeah.
So okay, if you two are the GMs, then I'm taking the role of coach here. That's where I'm going to hang out. I'm going to hang out in the role of on the coaching staff. I think that's where I'm going to hang out here. But gentlemen, we've been at this for about an hour and 40 minutes here. We got almost 1,300 people in the chat and watching the show, so appreciate everybody in there. But let's wrap this up here. Brandon, I'll go to you first. What do you got going over on the Hawks Nest in the upcoming days here?
We'll be obviously ear to the ground as far as what's going on. If there's any breaking news, I'll go live. But the plan for me is to go live during free agency. So I'll be Monday through Wednesday from the tampering period on through to the official opening on Monday. The morning to the afternoon, I'll be going live covering the action. So if you want to keep abreast of what's going on, check out the channel during that time.
So make sure you guys head on over to Brandon, the Hawks Nest. If you're not already over there, sub up to his channel. Brandon does amazing work over there. One of the best Seahawks content creators out there. Mookie, what do you got going on at Field Goals? What's cracking over there?
Well, we will have our big free agency tracker coming up. Actually, we'll have it live before Monday because there could be Seattle could extend some more free agents, whether they're restricted or unrestricted over the next couple of days. And it feels like that's as good a time as any to just get the tracker going, figure out who's been re-signed, who won't be kept, who's rumored to be going elsewhere. So we'll have it broken down by the restricted free agents and the unrestricted free agents. So it'll be me and the rest of the Field Goals team kind of manning the stations over the next several days, just that first wave of free agency. It's going to be busy as hell, whether the Seahawks sign people or they lose people or they do both. But hey, the NFL season no longer gives us real breaks in the offseason. If we go straight from the Super Bowl, and once we get to 18-game regular season, maybe a 3-week gap between that and then free agency, we're just going to keep churning and churning. I'm looking forward to this offseason. I choose not to panic off a Super Bowl win, which I'm going to emphasize this again because I write it in every article at Field Goals these last several weeks. The Seahawks won the Super Bowl. It's like, don't fret about whether they can win 3 or 4. Just celebrate what they just did, because you sure as hell didn't expect that to happen at the start of the year.
No, they were a year ahead of schedule, in my opinion. So, no, that all sounds great, guys. And if you guys haven't already, check out Dan Villa and Seahawks Forever. He was on earlier in the show. Make sure you guys head on over to Dan's channel there and sub up, because Dan's got great content as well. And I'm sure he'll have a bunch of great guests on over this time period of free agency. Over here on the Hawks Nest, Tuesday, I'm going live with Jeff Simmons of Real Hawk Talk, and basically kind of start the whole free agency conversation live with Jeff. So that'll be 5:30 Pacific time. And then later on in the week, I am going to be having Greg Bell on from the News Tribune, and hopefully we can discuss some acquisitions made by the Seattle Seahawks and get Greg's takes on how that all came to be. So for myself, for Brandon, for Mookie, and for Dan, as we always say, stay loud, be proud, and go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Have a good night, everybody.